Thank you, Lou. Joining me today are journalist Joshua Bowling from Searchlight New Mexico, Leon Howard, a longtime civil rights attorney and deputy director of the American Civil Liberties Union of New Mexico, and retired Metro Court Judge Sharon Walton. Thank you all for being here. So we just heard Lou lay out some of the grim police shooting statistics here in New Mexico, and Albuquerque in particular. Officers shot more people last year than in any other American city besides New York, Los Angeles, and Houston. And those are raw numbers, not rates. But this is a statewide issue in New Mexico, and I would like to begin there. Leon, why do the cops shoot so many people in New Mexico?
There's two ways I would think about that question. One is the big societal issues that plague our beautiful community, and those issues center around homelessness, drug use, and just mental health issues. And so those are big societal issues that contribute to this problem. But when you focus on the other side, there's a culture issue in policing. The DOJ has been here in Albuquerque for 10 years, and we only see statistics staying the same or spiking in terms of police encounters with citizens ending fatally. And so to drill down on a technical aspect of why we have that culture here in New Mexico of shoot first, ask questions later, I have to look at our justifiable homicide statute. It is extremely deferential to police. In my work, I've reviewed a lot of videos where you see police screaming, stop resisting, and even if they're dealing with a docile citizen. And I have to think that goes either to direct training or just officers learning the law in New Mexico. Because if you read the justifiable homicide statute, it allows for deadly force in situations where you're executing an arrest and a citizen's resisting. And so what at our organization we're working really hard on is to create a uniform use of force standard across the country, across the state, where every police department, whether it's the state police, a small municipality, or a county, are all operating under the same standards. So you're not in a situation where there's confusion for the police or the citizens about where the lines are. Right now, there are standard operating procedures that are different in every department. There's 10th Circuit law, there's United States Supreme Court law, there's state law, and so there's this hodgepodge of laws that make it confusing for officers to know where the lines are, and that could be by design. In a way, it protects the police. And so in terms of this culture issue, when officers know, and when you look at the numbers, that there's just been 3 officers who have been prosecuted over how long, that tends to go to the culture. And so marrying a uniform use of force standard to our justifiable homicide statute that indicates that if you're outside of this uniform use of force standard, then you can be prosecuted for crossing the line. Right now, society is very frustrated to see these incidents and then see AGs and DAs come to decisions not to prosecute, and playing from an inside look at the justifiable homicide statute, I can't blame them a lot of times for not charging.
So Judge Walton, we just heard Leon sort of drill down on policy and legal frameworks. Are there failures at other levels of government that are driving these numbers? What from your perspective sort of pushes this figure so high every year in New Mexico?
You know, I don't know that you can single out especially because the Department of Justice has been working with the Albuquerque Police Department and looking at, best practices and reviewing all of their policies and reviewing their training. And at least the Albuquerque Police Department has changed a lot of their approaches. They've rewritten policies, they've changed training, and the use of force training for the state also very much shifted towards de-escalation. And I think we need to recognize that even the Supreme Court law with respect to when police officers can shoot has changed pretty rapidly, from you could shoot any fleeing felon, period, to really being in a much different place now as society changes. And we've changed our expectation of police officers. Their role and what they have to do in our communities has changed so much, so quickly, and we place so many demands on them. And we've tried to create new units and new approaches as we see the deficiencies. I remember when I first worked for the police department as a young lawyer, there were a lot of shooting of people experiencing mental health crisis, and the whole CIT approach came into play. And it takes years for those things to really get incorporated, but it looks like that's something people recognize. There's officers with that training. And now today it seems like most officers have that training instead of just a couple, that every police officer going through an academy gets some. So they recognize those issues, and I think the departments have tried to be responsive, and the government cares. And I agree that there's a police culture. I don't agree that there's a shoot first, ask questions later. But there is a training, and it's a dangerous job. And it is that idea of you need to protect yourself. So if you let down your guard, and there are a lot of stories of when police officers let down their guard and something tragic happens to them. And it's expecting that balance and that momentary decision. So you have to have the recruiting of the best people, and the more policing is vilified and becomes more and more problematic and dangerous, the harder it is to attract people to the job. So it's almost a vicious cycle where we don't have a big pool of people interested in doing the job, and then we're more and more critical of them. At the same time, we're demanding more and more of them. So it's so complicated to try to fix and to say it's just this part, this problem. I think so many agencies have tried to write the magic policy, and legislatures have tried to write the law. We're a violent society for some reason. That's not something you can write a law about or a policy about. When situations are so violent and our city or our state or our country is so violent, we've got to figure out why. What are we doing? We talk a lot about gun violence, but maybe we need to take a step back from that and talk about violence. Why have we embraced being so violent and aggressive? And, if a police officer is responding to a situation, it takes a special skill to de-escalate. And not everybody has it every day. And we send them into these situations. I often think about that horrible domestic violence call that ended up that it was a dismembered child set on fire. How can you expect a police officer who responds to something like that to be okay? And the things that they see and the things that they're subject to, it causes that us and them, and the euphemisms of responding to and neutralizing a threat instead of
responding in a more human fashion.
Right.
So behavioral health services for police officers would be one way to sort of think about this.
But
I
we've
want
done
us
that.
to move on just a little bit. I'm
know.
sorry to cut you
You're
short.
good.
I want to talk a little bit about what happens after a police officer shoots somebody. Obviously, what immediately takes place is a couple of different investigations start. And Joshua, I'm going to ask you to respond to this question. On one side, you've got like an internal affairs investigator who's looking for policy violations. The stakes there obviously are that the officer could lose his job, be suspended, something like that. On the other side, you've got a criminal investigation. The stakes there are obviously much higher. You're talking about the potential of the officer's freedom. What have you learned through the course of your reporting, in particular about the way that criminal investigation takes place? Who does it? How does it happen?
Right, across the state broadly, state police handles that. Now, when we're here in Bernalillo County or down in Doña Ana County, we have what's called a multi-agency task force. And critics say that's really a misnomer because we have a coalition of, if APD, for example, fatally shoots someone, you have the multi-agency task force convene, and it's going to be made up of several different law enforcement agencies in the area, including the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. The big asterisk that is in bold and italicized next to that is that the agency who committed the shooting gets to lead the investigation. So critics say that's really, the fox guarding the hen house. In what world does that make sense, that you shoot someone and then you get to lead the investigation? Adding on to that, something that I've tried to really emphasize in my reporting is the fact that when this is referred to a district attorney's office or the attorney general's office for potential prosecution, they do not do an original investigation. They do not go interview people. They do not subpoena people. They review the documents and the body cam that the multi-agency task force or the state police, if you're outside of the metro area, has compiled. Can we trust that information? Can we trust the quality of that investigation if it's police who put it together themselves?
Sort of creates the potential for garbage in, garbage out. If you get a bad investigation and you're a prosecutor, you're left with a difficult decision based on kind of an incomplete case file.
And these are extremely difficult cases to prosecute. We have the history of James Boyd to show that. I think it's fascinating that A.G. Torres, with the Las Cruces case, is not going for a murder charge. We're going for voluntary manslaughter. We're going for what appears to be a very slightly lower bar here than a murder charge. One thing that I want to push back on, too, that I've heard a lot from these police departments as I've reported this out this year especially, I have really agonized over, we've made a huge multi-million-dollar commitment to mental health resources in Albuquerque and across the state. We have civilian first responders who will go to the site of a mental health crisis. Why are police shootings still on the rise? And I've had this conversation with APD, I've had this conversation with District Attorney Bregman, and the answer I always get from them is, it's simple, Joshua. Homicides are on the rise. Well, that kind of implies that police are coming up to the scene of a homicide in progress, seeing the bad guy try to kill somebody, and discharging their weapon on the scene. So I've poured through APD documents, and I'll tell you how many times that happened last year. It happened once. And the officer—
Out of 19 shootings.
Yes, and the officer missed the man he was shooting at. So we can attribute one of our fatal shootings to that statistic.
Gotcha.
But I would like to respond. I don't think that's what he means, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think it is that idea of people reacting violently and aggressively and the lack of trust and faith in police departments, because hearing your concern is that somehow, and I understand why, we've lost faith in our institutions that we used to trust and we used to believe. So if we believed that police officers were acting with integrity and investigating things, and then you would trust that investigation. But we're starting now from the premise of, if you're investigating yourself, you're automatically suspicious. And I understand that because there's the idea of protecting each other, thin blue line, things that we've heard all about. But we don't have that same trust and respect for law enforcement that things are going to go well, because we've seen too often that things don't go well.
I want to talk about one of the things that may have changed that. And Leon, I'll ask you to respond to this last question for this segment. How has body camera and citizen video changed the perception of this? The Azay shooting being a really good example of that. 2 body cam views, a citizen's recording of that. How has that changed things, in particular in a case like that, where it's an unarmed black man being shot?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. The having video available, of course, in a lot of instances is the best possible evidence you can have, and it makes it more real to citizens viewing that to make the threshold decisions to say that is not okay. We all grow up and want to feel safe, and so when there's not video evidence and you have the officer's word versus civilian witnesses, we want to believe the police. And so a lot of those barriers have been broken down, and we see how these situations can escalate. It's helpful to have that. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention APD's investigations and the lack of trust that has come from that, because there's a case here in a police shooting where some of the video footage was found to be missing, manipulated, a lot of times through public records. Things get lost and you have to sue the department, like pulling teeth to get that type of evidence. And so all of that erodes trust. And when you mention the impact of seeing the videos and the impact that that has on community of colors, it can't be underestimated. When you're a kid growing up in our society and you keep seeing unarmed black people across the country being shot and killed by the police, that takes an emotional, it puts emotional weight on our communities, and it does erode the trust. It gives you a lack of faith in the system, and it's incredibly heartbreaking for parents to have those discussions with their children, because at the end of the day, when I talk to people in the black community, it's not that we don't want police. We want law enforcement that works for us the same way it works across the board for other communities.
We could spend the rest of the day talking about this one, but we're going to have to leave this segment here. I appreciate everyone's thoughts. We're far from done with this topic, though. We're going to take a very short break to look ahead in our show before we shift the conversation towards the rest of the justice system's role in police shootings. Thank you all.